and welcome to MxM Live. We are delighted to have here with us somebody whom I have a great amount of respect for, Mr. Kaushik Roy. Mr. Kaushik Roy has been in the advertising and marketing services industry for over 4 decades. And other than marketing services that he has been involved with, he is also a creative person. He has acted and directed and produced films. And well, he's just a writer. But no, I do not have Kaushik Roy here. I have Roy Phoenix. Tell me, Kaushik, first of all, welcome to MxM Live. Delighted to have you with us here. I must tell you, I've for our viewers here, I have been reading this wonderful book called Alphabetica, which has been written by Roy Phoenix, and it's a wonderful book. I must say that it required initially a certain amount of concentration because you are not used to characters like the way they are, but once you get a hang of it, it's unputdownable, I must say. So congratulations on this book, and it will be great speaking with you. So my first question first, why not Kaushik Roy? Because in the rest of the book, you've identified people, you've acknowledged your sons, you've spoken about your wife and a few friends, etc. So why not Kaushik Roy?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. And as you can tell, that I'm not used to being an author being interviewed. I'm more used to, like you said, being the brand person, being asked about what I'm doing and the advertising or the branding work that I'm doing, either as an agency or the client. But this is a very different kind of feeling. And yes, it is a bit of a challenge to get used to the name Roy Phoenix, because every time I'm signing the book, I stop, because the tendency is to write Kaushik Roy or to write Roy Kaushik. But then I have to, remember that I'm, as the author, Roy Phoenix. And Roy Phoenix is simply because, okay, like you started off talking about my advertising and 40 years of doing this business. But I just felt that since I'm going to be writing a book, I shouldn't be, taking anything from my past. I should start as a debutant with nothing to do with the past. I mean, I should actually try to build on what I have, which is my book, which is what I'm going to be seen as an author, even by a large universe of people who don't know me as Kaushik Roy. And that was the first thing, to be, creating a new brand for myself. The second was that I felt that if I had to have a pseudonym, I felt that there has to be something to do with my past. Number one, Roy, of course, is my surname, which is my family name. And the second part, which is Phoenix, it's coming from my father. My father started an advertising agency in 1948. And this was an agency which was called Phoenix. And as a young child, I used to go to my father's advertising agency, spend hours over there. And I discovered this logo, which had this bird. I thought it was a bird, but I later realized it's more like a dragon, which had fire beneath it. And I was fascinated. And I asked, and I was told that it's no ordinary bird, but the phoenix. And the phoenix lives for 1,000 years and then sets itself aflame and then rises from its ashes. So, every time I say this, I get goosebumps, because I feel it's a fascinating story. It's about reincarnation. It's about, rejuvenating yourself. So I felt that Phoenix, if I had to have in my name, would perhaps be like something that would always, give me a new reason to do something. And this is one more new reason.
But, you mentioned about the brand, and yeah, as a brand specialist, it's now you have dual identities, right?
Yes, that's a challenge. So as I've decided that if it's going to be fiction, I will stick to Roy Phoenix. If it's going to be non-fiction, which I will obviously get into, I will switch back to Kaushik Roy, because the non-fiction part will have to be me as a person and my own experiences, which I can't, be somebody else like Roy Phoenix. So I will do that. Hopefully I'll get there. It's now, a new kind of challenge, a new kind of anxious moments that I'm going through, having written a book. And I realized that after, I've gone through this once before, several times before, but once in a big way, which is my film Witness launch. The reviews are never meant to be uniform. There will be some who will bash you, and there will be some who will say wonderful things. So you have to balance it out. So I'm sure this book will also have its, brickbats and some good comments also. And I'll have to, see how it goes. So as a new brand, I will have to behave like a new brand, and not that 40-year-old or the 40 years of experience. I have to be, I have to be humble. I have to be, not trying to be the Kaushik Roy who's supposed to be getting a certain kind of attention, or who can rely, as I said, on the past laurels. I have to be like a debutant. Only thing is that I'm a very graying debutant sitting in front of you. I wish I was, 25, and a lot of people would perhaps have there's a lot of sympathy coming my way. Oh, young boy, he's written a book. I mean, let's encourage him. Now it's going to be like, oh, this old man, why did he have to write a book? So it's very different. But Roy Phoenix has to battle it out, yes.
But I'm sure, you will be called, hey, dude, good book, and all of that, because it perhaps appeals to a different set of people, right? I read the book, and perhaps somebody who's younger, who's not used to the usual settings of fiction, may be able to get to the book a little faster. But cutting to, when I had heard about the fact that you are working on something in fiction, but when I saw this tweet by our friend Ramesh Narayan about your book a month back, and I said, gosh, now this is a book called Alphabetica. It is a satire on majoritarianism, and the subtext says, when the consonant majority attacks the vowel minority, the world of words falls silent. And I said, gosh, now, Kaushik is going to need the last alphabet, which is Z security, Z plus security, because, we are talking about, you've dealt with a subject like majoritarianism in an environment, in a country where, majoritarianism is really impacting the social fabric of the country. So my two questions is, one, did you ever feel that you're treading on a crazy terrain, given the fact that India is perhaps an exceedingly intolerant nation? So why don't you answer that, and let me get to the other question later.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, I have to tell you that, in all honesty, this is an idea. We advertising people have this thing about the idea, because we say that it's a big idea. And if it stays with you long enough, then it is obviously a great idea. So this idea came to me in 2008. And I remember precisely, I was on my way to Madurai for autism camp for my younger son. I woke up in that bus, and I just remembered that I had a dream. It was a very strange dream. And I have to narrate it to you that I was actually talking to Javed Akhtar. Don't ask me why, but I was having this conversation with Javed Akhtar, and I just told him that, Javed bhai, just imagine we are so obsessed about the majority rule, and the minority must do certain things which they tell us to do in this country. And what if we have a situation that in the 26 letters, there are these consonants which are 21 in majority. And they say that, look, it's going to be only the consonants, and our way or the highway, and the vowels are made to vanish. So what will happen to the words? And I woke up. So this was 2008. And it remained with me. I kept thinking about it, and I never really got down to writing it because first I thought it's a great idea, but I don't know how to do it. I didn't know whether it was a short story or a children's story. Then in 2019, I was in Jerusalem. And again, it's very interesting that I was there for my son. This time we were doing something for kind of an intervention, which was in Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, I think I have to say, did something to me. I mean, in the sense that it was a fascinating experience, a fascinating city where three religions had, started in that one place. And they were, kind of jostling for space in the old city. And all three were there. And of course, there was this overlapping, overarching kind of thing about the Jews and how they were kind of treated and the genocide and everything else. So I think suddenly this book came back to me and I started writing. And that was the point. And yes, there were certain triggers because if you remember 2019, it was still Trump. And Trump was actually behaving in a country which is meant to be. America was like a role model for democracy in the sense of they actually have maintained in a way like the highest standard. And suddenly you had a man over there who was passing executive orders and they were very clearly meant to be such that this land is ours and this is for a certain type of person and it is not for those who have come later. They don't belong here. So at the same time, I also realized that I also come from a country where things have changed very dramatically. I didn't have the word majoritarianism at the start. I just felt that the liberty with which we operated, the freedom of speech that we had, the freedom with which we actually spoke to each other without having any fear or without having this concern that how we would be treated, and that we were allowed to criticize a person for the work that he or she did. We were allowed to criticize the government because it was just a political party. Suddenly it had become something where you cannot criticize because the person who's running the country is almost like a god, or the party which is in power is meant to be a party which cannot do anything wrong. And that is when I felt that I need to write this book, which was an idea of 2008. And I started writing. And as I wrote, I started looking at this idea in a different way because I realized it could never be a story that simple because I had to make the letters come alive as human beings and they had to be having a certain amount of credibility. So frankly, I knew nothing about how these letters have come to us, where they started. And as I started getting deeper and deeper into it, I could see that if they were human beings, as they're meant to be in my story, they would talk like us. I mean, the way we speak, which is there'll be the consonants who will say that we are Phoenicians and we have been around for 3,500 years. And we were 22 consonants when the alphabetic system started. And there were no vowels. But the vowels are intruders because they came from Greece. So the Greeks actually invaded us. And today, the Greek vowels are actually running the whole show because they have so much of importance. If you look into the dictionary, you'll find that the vowels have a word share which is huge compared to the consonants. And then I found that there was another kind of influence, which is the Romans, who came and they, according to the consonant voice, it would be the Romans who didn't understand anything. They never understood the importance of the Phoenicians. They gave so much of importance to the Greeks. And the Greeks have taken over in their way that they have started from left to right, which was meant to be read right to left. So I suddenly felt that this is how they would talk. And this is exactly the way, is the narrative that we hear. It's about, who came first, whose land, who's an intruder, and who's done something wrong, who's trying to sort of become, as I heard later, that, there is this thing about the oppression of the minority. The minority is trying to sort of take control. So yes, the book started happening in a way where, it's an interesting point, which is you spoke about India, you spoke about the kind of...
No, I must interrupt here. The back cover says it's an allegorical satire that addresses the ever contemporary themes of fanaticism and intolerance.
Yes.
Now, you could have just left it without really mentioning this.
Yes.
But the very fact that you have mentioned it, it does talk about the fact that somewhere, and you're talking about Trump, but somewhere there are influences other than just that. And do you, as a creative person, perhaps that hat is on as against somebody who understands that some other creative works in the last few years have had have seen a reaction which perhaps is uncalled for or is incorrect for creative work. Did that ever ever make you think twice?
Absolutely. I think there's no point in trying to hide and say that this is about Trump. But I believe that this is a fault of democracy. Democracy, when it is driven by the majority, and it can always be in every country where there is a democratic process, there is a possibility of, if there are no checks and balances, because democracy must have a very strong judiciary, and it also must have a very vibrant press, the media. And the media, if it is suppressed and it's almost bought out, and if it is almost threatened with one thing, which is advertisements, that they will not get it, the media will actually crumble. And as far as the judiciary is concerned, we know what has happened. There have been very strange appointments of the Chief Justice, etc. So yes, there are some fault lines that have shown up in our democracy. But at the same time, I will hasten to say one thing, which is in my book. I've used 15 symptoms of what I would say is the symptoms of majoritarianism, starting with very small kind of grudges, with little kind of steps, and they keep building up to a point where it will actually then become somebody who turns into a dictator. Now, why I'm saying this is because if you really look at the whole story of dictators, you will find that most of the dictators have come out of a democratic system. I mean, even the great dictator, as I have referred to in my book, has come out of a democratic system. I mean, there was an election. First, they had a disastrous kind of result. Then they started building. Then they, managed the whole system in a manner that it was again a very important thing, which is to make the Germans believe that they are being deprived, to believe that they are actually the losers, to believe that there's somebody else who's more powerful than you, the Jews. They have a better life, they have more money, they have all that. So I think this kind of narrative is very important to push for. And I have said all that, of course, in a fictional way and with a lot of humor in it. But yes, my point is very simple, which is if you believe that all or any of these symptoms are similar or close to what is happening in our country, well, then it is this country. Or if you believe that this could be another country, then it is that country. But I believe that, it's never like all 15 would fit in, but a majority would.
I must confess to you that while I was reading this book, I looked at the first few pages, and I was wondering whether you have put in over there about, about the fact that these are fictional characters, and it's there. All characters in this book are the original imaginary creations of the author. So yeah, well, you have put in that disclaimer
Yes.
there,
Yeah.
uh, but, uh, but we all know what the issues are. So let me not get to that, because obviously the objective is not to create a controversy here and get you the.
I think it's that part is inevitable. I can't get away from the controversy. But at the same time, what I want to quickly add is that it is a book which talks about the alphabet for only one thing. And that is that the alphabet is a perfect example of diversity. I mean, 26 alphabet, the letters, they're all very different. And yet they live together. They have to. If you have a broken alphabetic system, then you will have no words. So in the same way, I believe that there is a way that, I mean, people have told me that I'm too utopian in my thinking, and I have this, I'm a dreamer and all that. So was John Lennon, so it's all right. So even as a dreamer, I would say that yes, it is possible. It is possible that we know of many examples where I would say that, coming from Kolkata as a young child, we went to school. We never ever even asked who was a Brahmin or who was Muslim or who was Christian. Their names were a little different. But I mean, for example, I had a Muslim friend who was a very close friend. His name was Sumit Kabir. Now, Sumit Kabir turned out to be a Muslim, maybe I think in the last 4 or 5 years. And you know how he turned out to be a Muslim is because in the school group, which are all friends, I suddenly discovered that all these friends over the years, they had changed so much. They had become, like radical. And it was a face that I had never seen. And it's strange that it is now that they are showing their true colors to say that, this land is ours and who are they, etc. And then in this crossfire, it emerged that Sumit Kabir, who's this close friend of ours, is actually a Muslim. He never behaved like one. He looked like us, he spoke like us, he did everything that we do, I mean, including all the pujas, everything that we did. And then suddenly he was singled out in the group as a Muslim. So I think what has happened is that things have changed to the point that we are looking, and even, so I'm saying that this is where I was born, but I never felt. So I was going to say that that was the kind of world where I would think that it is possible, that you don't have to have kind of a situation where you have to always say that, this guy is some other religion and that guy should not enter. We were brought up in an environment where we never questioned. Yeah, there could be other homes which were different, but my home, where I was brought up, we never in my, and I must also add that, though of course it means nothing, my mother is Brahmin. She allowed a Muslim driver to get into the kitchen and cook for us. And my grandmother, who's also a Brahmin from my mother's side, would not eat anything other than the food that was cooked by my mother. I mean, so look at the whole, what should I say, the contrast, that there was somebody who's my grandmother who would not eat food served to her by any, not even by me, because my father was a Vaidya. So, slightly different caste. So there was a kind of orthodox side. And then there was my home where we never bothered about these things. But suddenly today, I find that even Calcutta, if I go back, they're only talking about, who's taking over the city, and those guys are doing certain things. I'm sure those are, pain points. You cannot ignore it. But I feel that, that magic with which we operated, where religion was, not the important thing. It was the social fabric. It was about, exchanging your views in an open forum, and believing that we're all Indians, and we've come together in 1947 to become one country. That was the spirit, which I think has gone. It's just disappeared. And the same people are, calling out somebody as a Muslim. That is a sad thing.
Well, it's very clear what your real views are, and that's kind of comes out very clear from the book. But let me just take a break and let's move on from the issues around the book as and move to the book itself. It would be great to have Roy Phoenix read out some of your favorite parts of the book. I know we don't have too much time, but it'd be one or two parts that you think you would help people get a flavor of the book, and for the benefit of all our readers and all those who are watching here, the book is available on all popular websites that are there.
Amazon being the main one. Yeah.
Amazon, Flipkart, etc. It's available. So you must.
You know what? This shows how unprepared I am as an author. I didn't keep a book over here. So give me 1 sec. I'll just have to stretch out my hand and get it.
So we wait for.
Yeah, I've got it right here in front of me. Okay, so which part should I read? Let me read one part, which I think. See, in my book, there is Y, which is somebody who's driving this story, and I cannot tell you everything about Y. But why should Y be the antagonist, so to speak? I felt that it had to be somebody, and this is also again when I started thinking more about the book, it had to be somebody who can be easily hurt. People starting with the great dictator, they were the kind of people who were always getting upset, getting hurt, getting this feeling that they were let down and they didn't get what they were supposed to. So why starts off with a very small thing, which is Anne. Why is it that she shouldn't get the N as an article? Why should the vowels get it? And why is also questioning the lexicon where there is a word share, and word shares seem to be always having a kind of a preference for the vowels. And that is when, of course, Y says that, Epsi, which is E, is not really the hardworking vowel, because there is a space bar which is actually used the most but gets no mention in the lexicon. So talking about Y, I will read one portion, and this is a portion where I think Y is actually starting to believe that she's somebody very important. And the way it happens is that they live in this planet called the typewriter, and the planet has a god. Now we have to understand that, like in a planet typewriter, there would be the numbers, there would be the letters, there'll be the signs and the punctuations. Now, as far as the letters are concerned, they see this person as a poet god. But as far as the numbers are concerned, they see as another god. And this god is meant to be a writer. Now, it's a very fascinating thing, again, as a parallel, which is that there is one planet, but it has two gods, and they can't agree. And just to give you a quick background, which is that the numbers stay in another side of the planet, and their planet or their land is called the Numerica. Numerica is their land. And the 10 numbers are seen with a lot of suspicion because they're very rigid, regimented. And the thing about them is that they're precise. So 1 is 1, 2 is 2. Whereas if you look at the letters, each letter could be making multiple sounds. Every vowel could be having, like A, and on so on and so forth. And the classic example we know is OUGH. When you have OUGH, it could be through, ought, rough. So all these are, OUGH words, but it doesn't happen with the numbers. So there is this contrasting two worlds. And again, you will catch me on this, but whenever there is a situation where Ipsy wants to get rid of the vowel, she could be saying that we'll send off this character to numerica. And there is Q, which is meant to be the queen, and the Q has a tail, but she refuses to acknowledge that as a tail. She believes that she's regal, therefore that's a regal gown which has its train. So they say that they will put them on Q's train and we'll send them off to numerica. So, well, that is how, but of course, the story goes on, and there is a realization that when the vowels have to run away, they have to go to the neighboring land of numerica. And the vowels discover that actually the numericas are very rigid, they're very quiet, they make no sound, but they're actually very good human beings. I mean, it's almost like you suddenly discover that they're not bad people at all. But the interesting thing is that it's always convenient to make it look, at least for Ipsy, who's meant to be driving this to become the dictator, to always say that those are not good guys. Those are not, the people that we can rely upon. Okay, I will read a little bit, which I think brings forth this thing about Y, who's Ipsy. And Ipsy has this thing about being very knowledgeable, though she knows that she's not the most knowledgeable. It is C, which is Camel, who's the scholar. And Camel lacks one thing, which is courage. So Camel knows everything, but does not ever open her mouth. But Ipsy is the one who's, just learned from the accidental teacher, which is Mrs. Poet. And she's now talking to her housemates, which is X and Z. It's C and Z, C and Z. So one day at the Underwood, Ipsy, a perpetual first bencher in Mrs. Poet's class, heard the poet and his wife discuss the evolution of the English alphabet. Ipsy promptly gave it a spin and named it The Birth of Alphabetica, and began lecturing her consonant mates with a superior air. Assuming the role of Professor Winus, she claimed, we consonants not only are the majority, but we are also the direct descendants of the 22 Phoenician consonants who gave birth to this land called Alphabetica. Don't confuse us with the minority Greek vowels. Ours is a proud heritage and a rich culture that was in vogue during the early Iron Age. And we have been the guiding light of this land for over 3,000 years. C and Zine were indifferent backbenchers who slept through Mrs. Poet's classes. That made things easy for Ipsy in promoting her bizarre thesis. After the glorification of the consonants, the professor went on to demolish the vowels. Our Phoenician forefathers were just 22 consonants. Forget about being minority as they are today. The vowels didn't exist at that start. They were like little dots and squiggles. All thanks to the Greeks, the vowels surreptitiously infiltrated Alphabetica. Then, after the Romans granted them Latin citizenship, they usurped the compass and tricked them into reading the alphabet left to right instead of right to left. The Phoenicians' way has been abolished. In fact, this land was meant to be called Phoenitica, but the Greek vowels blackmailed the poet into changing it to Alphabetica. The Romans, what could they do? They just said, Vini Vidi Vici, and left us in a mess with a loud Arrivederci. Ipsy looked sharply at the two dumbstruck mates and continued. And now the vowels happily use the article an, like their regal toga. But do you realize the harm they've done to us? if she provoked a little more. Not only do we have to live at the bottom of the westerly wall, which is where they stay, but our house has also got the most insulting name, the end. If we were to be read the Phoenician way, right to left, earthling children would be taught to call us ZYX and not ABC. And do guess what would be the name of our house? C, who decided to be sounding intelligent, spoke out. Tail enders, meaning we put an end to being the tail. If she screamed, my single left foot, it would be the first. And as three blue-blooded Phoenician consonants, we would get to decide everything first, including the use of the article and.
It's good fun. And I must tell you, as a journalist and who has learned typing and has romanced the typewriter, though not an Underwood, a brother, and that perhaps gives you the vintage at which I started, I embraced the typewriter.
We've all done that, yes. Yeah.
So, but I love the various references. And I'm going to read out something for you.
Yeah.
Which is page
Please.
3. And the fun was, of course, and I saw various things in it. Well, one was, of course, I was trying to look at the likeness to current affairs, yeah, and what could you be actually saying? And as a journalist, it's always good to pick out these things and figure what you're trying to say. But of course, it's also because of the references that you have made to things that one has worked with. All these years of my professional and college life. So I have a thing to say. Of course, I'm not going to give the context, but just reading it and giving a flavor to our people here. As soon as Sam's 10 fat fingers rested on the home row of keys from A to colon, the 26 characters felt totally connected by 10 telegraph poles. A lightning-like telegram of confidence passed through. Let's do it for the alphabeticians, the numericans, punctuation and science. Let's do it for the Underwood. Let's do it for the planet typewriter. Let's stand united for our benefactor, the author. Finally, Sam seemed to command his finger soldiers to open fire. His epic one-liner burst into a rat-a-tat-tat. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Several rounds of his magic mantra were fired like a 26-gun salute. Sam's fingers moved tirelessly with ferocious speed as he challenged the Underwood to move faster and faster. Amazing. I really enjoyed the book for some of these references as somebody who's worked on the typewriter, who's worked on the ASDF semicolon
LKJ,
QWERTY keyboard, etc. When you talk about that, and sometimes you remember even if you want to write something, if you're thinking of something, you perhaps think of it and type out the alphabets in air, and
yes.
it was great fun doing it. So tell me, we are kind of exceeding our time. So although this is the web and there's no 23 minutes or whatever that one has to stick to, but did you need to map out the story? Did you make some kind of a blueprint? Okay, A, Z, whatever, vowels, all of that, or did you just did all of it just flow? Because once again, when you have characters with name, it is easier to handle it. But here you have alphabets and numericals and all of that, which are fictional, but it's beyond fiction.
Yes. So I'll tell you. As far as I said, that the maximum work had to go into Y, because Y had to be a very strong character. And I think it's lost on some people, which I realize is that there are some people who react perhaps by saying that what's so great about this, alphabet A is A, B, C, D. TK. I mean, why do I need to know more than that? So there is one lot like that. So this book is not for them. So this book is for people who are interested in not just a fiction. It's not just a satire about 26 letters, but it's also a satire about people, I call them people as humans, as characters, who have a backstory. So one of the things that I've worked on, which is what I think you're asking me, is to build the credibility by bringing in the facts. Now, it is possible that sometimes those facts may appear like I've just, created a story, but it's not. I mean, it's all about the facts. So therefore, your question about how I went about it, yes, I chose Y to be the antagonist because, she had a lot of reasons to be anxious and angry and all that because of starting with the Anne and so on and so forth. Then I had to find another person who would be able to bring them all together. And I had to really struggle because I was stuck with this thing about 26 and I couldn't decide who could possibly bring them together. Had to be a Gandhi, And then suddenly I realized that there is somebody called ampersand. And ampersand, some people call it the short and, some people call it the Roman and so on and so forth. But ampersand turned out to be a fascinating character because ampersand, I can't obviously be a spoiler to tell you all about ampersand. Ampersand is not a numerical, is not an alphabetical, is not a regular sign like a comma or a full stop or a punctuation, is somebody very unique because ampersand has been created long time ago. And it is fascinating to hear about ampersand because it's one of those lost letters. It's actually a letter which has been lost over a period of time. Yet, ampersand can never divide. Ampersand can only bring people together. So therefore, ampersand is a glue. So in my book, I had to really work hard. And it was, okay, it's like this, which is, I can easily say that ampersand is because it's and therefore ampersand will bring them together. But that would be the easy, lazy way of doing it. I had to bring credibility about who is ampersand. Why is ampersand somebody who understands the importance of bringing people together? Why is ampersand somebody who has been so close to the students, the children, and yet today is no longer very close, is somebody almost forgotten, yet has the role of, all that is there in the book, and that's the reality. So therefore, yes, part of it is organic, part of it, yes, of course, Epsi, which is E, epsilon, had to be a stand-up comedian. And you know how stand-up comedians are meant to be, because stand-up comedians crack jokes. And this is a very interesting thing that I will touch upon, which is that if you really look at humor, from the time that you and I, we've grown up, we would have seen front page masthead cartoons. It's gone. Why? Because we do not have the sense of humor to laugh at our own self. So therefore, humor has no place. So it is not a coincidence that stand-up comedians are being bashed around and they're losing their money and whatever else because the shows are getting cancelled. So in my book, Epsi had to be the stand-up comedian because Epsi has a certain kind of arrogance also, because Epsi understands that her importance is that almost in every word you would have to have an E. So
sorry, go ahead.
No, so I'm just saying that, so Epsi also has a habit of roasting, like a stand-up is meant to be. But there are some people who can take the roasting and laugh, but there are some people like Epsilon, Y, who cannot. So that is how, so yes, I've given certain types of characters who are very much like the ones that we get to see. So they are, yes, they're debaters, they're scholars, some of them are dancers, some of them into sports and so on and so forth. I mean, in the sense that it's very much like the people we know. And at the end of it, what is very important is the people who know the most are the ones who are very silent. That is a scholar's see. So yes, I mean, that's how it is.
On a lighter note, well, not exactly a lighter note, why did Y have the shades of gray? Did you ever think of making it N or M or any other alphabets?
No, it was always why. Because I just felt that, if you had a kind of cranky character who kept on asking why, who could it be? It had to be why who kept on asking why. And as I've said, that her whys in the beginning are meant to be curiosity of, wanting to know more. And then it becomes animosity. So it is about an angry why, to say that why should we be treated this way and why not that way. So it had to be why. I think there is no question about it. And there is also that thing about why having the hubris to believe that she can pull it off. I mean, she can actually do that. I mean, there is one absurd song in this book about why composing a rap where it is all why words without a single vowel.
Yes, and the role of the ampersand, if you look at the real life, there perhaps there's hardly any ampersand around in our lives, in our country.
That's a sad part. I think though it started a kind of a strong opposition, I think the last ampersand that we have seen is maybe Jayaprakash Narayan, who had this way of building a kind of an opposition to somebody who was running this country like a dictator through the emergency period. We don't see a Jayaprakash Narayan anymore. I mean, the little bit of Anna Hazare just fizzled out. I mean, though it could have been, but it didn't happen. So yes, I think the problem over there is that all the people who are wanting to be the opposition, that's another very interesting chapter, which is called oneness. They're all believing that this is my battle, so I have to lead. So when the opposition is made up of the punctuations and the signs and the numbers and the vowels, different sizes, the vowels are the smallest and the numbers are bigger, and then so on and so forth. But the bigger problem is that they have never been homogeneous in their behavior, so they can never work. And ampersand does some amazing things to make them understand that the power of one. I mean, if we had the time, I would have read it, but that's a very interesting way, which actually says that you need always one. And after writing it, I realized that there is a wonderful example that we always had, we referred to, which is Rabindranath Tagore's Akla Chalo Re, which actually means that you have to start as one, and then the others will follow.
No, I'm going to actually, I would have made this the last question, but I think there's something which I feel very strongly about. And as a website, MxM India, we feel very strongly about doing something for the differently abled.
Yes.
And we run a column on disability and the media. And it's my belief that the media can play a very critical role in making the world of the differently abled a better place. That it is not doing it, it's unfortunate, but the objective is to educate, etc. And, you've written in the book, and the Alphabetica is also about the marginalized few, the differently abled who get rejected by the mainstream majority. I'm going to leave it at this. I'm going to, obviously I don't want to talk too much about it, but for those of you who like reading, who enjoy reading, you must read this, because it's an allegory, and obviously we've heard Kaushik Roy, aka Roy Phoenix, talk about some of his ideas and some of his beliefs. But it means a lot. It means a lot to a whole lot of people. For me, it meant, of course, the likeness to real life situations and what they are, and the current situation of majoritarianism and the intolerance, etc. It does talk about that, but it's also good fun. It's has
my idea was to make it fun. Do
we
have 30 seconds? Then I'm just going to read out one paragraph, which is going to be touching on the point that you just spoke about. And this, I think, is a very, very short paragraph, which is ampersand again, who tries to explain why the earthlings are not the best examples. The best example is Alphabetica. And he says, "Dear ones, there is no end to the earthlings' methods of segmentation that only helps them dissect and divide. Instead of getting influenced by them, we should share our example of Q with earthlings. Q is in the minority of one for not being able to form words on her own. For earthlings, she would have been declared a handicapped and challenged person, a burden on society. But in our planet of harmony and love, we have you, who is totally committed to Q so that she doesn't remain silent. And that is the truth of our planet typewriter." So, this is what I tried to say, which is that it's not just random things that I've written. I've thought about it, which is there is so much of examples that you get out of even 26 letters, that there's a Q who represents what we just read, which is the differently abled. And yet there is a U which has a way of supporting Q so that she has a voice.
Great. It was a pleasure speaking with you, Kaushik, about the book and about your views on life. I really hope this book does very well. And for all of you here, please go ahead, order your book, and don't wait for a book reading session, which perhaps may not be possible in these times. In any case, there are hardly any bookshops left in cities like Mumbai and Delhi. So be that as it may, it's a very interesting book. And Kaushik, congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Roy Phoenix and for this wonderful book. You've been in you've played around with cinema, and you've produced, you've done films. Do you think this could perhaps make it to that form?
Well, one of the things that happened to me, why I didn't write for a very long time, is that I was wanting to leapfrog and get into a 3D animation film. So it's absolutely perfectly made for that. And if you ask me, I've also written it like a film. I mean, you would actually be able to see much of what you would see in a film. And I've also tried to put in it a kind of content which I would call musical. So in my book, there are multiple songs, and those songs are meant to be like you would possibly have in an animated film like this, where they break into songs. Why? Because the poet actually is composing songs always. And that's what the letters are singing. And they have a great place to hang out. It's called the italics, where they never drink, but they have ink. And ink is available in every color. And so they get high on ink.
On that note, and let's hope that it transforms to a film which is perhaps a good way that this would be. You would also spread the message, send the message home to various people, and we'll speak to you once again when that happens. Thank you very much, and all the very best.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for all the questions which made me think very hard.
Well, I couldn't not ask you some of these questions because I do know that they are sensitive, etc. But what the hell? If you don't ask,
absolutely, I totally agree. Because at the end of the day, one has to be honest about the whole thing. Because I think many of us have been deeply hurt about.
We are still recording. Kaushik. So we are going to stop the recording and then we'll talk off the record. But thank you, and we'll be back with another interview soon with MxM Live. And it's always good to speak with people here, and as it was with Kaushik Roy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I should let my recording continue, not stop.
You can stop it also.
Okay, I can stop.
You can stop it also.
Right.
And once you close this, once you exit on the red block.